Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime drama Sydney Greenstreet in the New Adventures of Nero Wolfe from 72 years ago today, March 30th, 1951, The Case of the Telltale Ribbon. And we thank you for tuning in. On this Sure Happy It's Thursday, this is the 30th day of March, 89th day of the year, 276 days remaining until we get to 2024. Florida Territory, created in the U.S. on this date in 1822. Anesthesia used for the first time in an operation on this date in 1841. In 1858, Hyman Lipman patented a pencil with an attached eraser. In 1867, Alaska purchased for $7.2 million, about 2 cents an acre, by Secretary of State William Seward. The news media called it Seward's Folly. By the way, that $7.2 million today, that would be $261 million. So for all that land and all that oil, not a bad buy. The Mississippi Legislature founded the University of Southern Mississippi on this date in 1910. Premiering on this date in 1951 on Broadway, The King and I.
Oh, good morning, Your Majesty.
You think you teach King lesson, but this is one lesson you do not be paid for teaching. In future, you will stop instructing wives and children in silly English song, Home Sweet House, in order to remind me of breaking promises I never make, etc., etc., etc.
Yul Brynner and Gertrude Lawrence starred in the original Broadway production. That would be Lawrence's last role before her passing from cancer. And Deborah Carr in that clip from the motion picture. King and I premiering on Broadway on this date in 1951. Merv Griffin's game show Jeopardy made its debut on television on this date in 1964. Art Fleming hosted the first version on NBC television. Isn't it interesting to find out that Jeopardy, premiering in 1964, still around today? Of course, The Price is Right, which premiered in 1956, is still around today. Totally different types of shows. 1981, President Reagan shot in the chest outside a Washington, D.C. hotel by John Hinckley Jr.
Shots rang out as President Reagan was leaving the hotel and about to enter his limousine. At least one person was hit and fell to the sidewalk with blood coming from his body. It was not the president. I don't know whether the president was hit. I do not believe he was. His car left rapidly under police escort. The shots were fired by someone in the crowd of people watching the president depart.
Reporter Sam Donaldson. As the events were breaking, Secretary of State Alexander Haig spoke to the media at the White House.
As of now, I am in control here in the White House, pending return of the Vice President, and in close touch with him. If something came up, I would check with him, of course.
Now, considering that Vice President Bush was not immediately available, Haig's statement reflected political reality, if not necessarily legal reality. 1982, STS-3 mission completed of the Space Shuttle program, the landing of Columbia at White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico. And in 2017, a different space program, SpaceX, conducting the world's first reflight of an orbital-class rocket. Among those passing away on this date in history, radio commentator Gabriel Heater, also Harold Perry of the great Gildersleeve fame, heart attack on this date, actor James Cagney passing away, Mr. Lucille Ball, Gary Morton, also journalist Alistair Cook, singer Timmy Euro, comedian Mitch Hedberg, musician Bill Withers, and G. Gordon Liddy, all passing away on this date in history. This is the birthday to painter Vincent van Gogh, band leader Ted Heath, singer Frankie Lane, and Randy Van Warmer, Just When I Needed You Most. Turning 97 today, the man at the center of the Hollywood squares, Peter Marshall, actually the host for many, many years. Gomez and the Addams Family, John Astin still with us at 93. The man who sang about Time a Kangaroo Down Sport, Rolf Harris, 93. Actor-director Warren Beatty, 86. Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, 78. From My Two Dads and Mad About You, Paul Reiser is 67. MC Hammer, 61 years old. Tracy Chapman, 59, singing about those fast cars. From 90210, Ian Zerling is 59. Presenter Piers Morgan, 58. From Baywatch, Donna D'Errico is 55. Celine Dion, also 55. Comedian Tim Hawkins also turns 55 today.
So a while back I put out a Facebook post asking people for ideas of Christian cuss words. I got over 10,000 responses from you freaks. Now none of these is for me. You can't put it on me. Over 10,000 from you bozos. It took me 2 weeks to go through them, and I whittled it down to about 100 or so Christian alternative cuss words that you could use. I haven't memorized it yet, but I'd like to recite it for you right now. So Christians, just take these and cuss up a storm. Listen up, here we go. Shucks, rats, gadzooks, shizzle, toot. Crapola. Which I guess is Spanish for crap. I don't know. Crapola. You almost stepped in crapola. Or it's the worst crayon color ever. Hey, who's got the crapola over here? Trying to draw a tree trunk. I need to stop taking my crapola.
The very funny Tim Hawkins turning 55 today. Nora Jones, 44, another singer. Also singer Anna Nalick is 33. And Country's Thomas Rhett is 33. Those some of the people celebrating the 30th day of March is their birthday. If this is your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you!
From 72 years ago today, March 30th, 1951, The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe starring Sydney Greenstreet on this Thursday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite radio station. Now on this Thursday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we go back 72 years to March 30th, 1951, Sydney Greenstreet in The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ringing of that phone bell brings you mystery, adventure.
Nero Wolfe's office, Archie Goodwin speaking. What? Who? Who is this? Who wants to speak to Mr. Wolfe?
Nobody.
Nobody?
I said that. Hang up. It's late and it's too cold. And even if it weren't, I would not consider for one moment moving from this room.
Please, Mr. Wolfe, I can't hear a thing this old gentleman's saying.
Does it matter? You heard what I said? No.
Now, what did you say? You were late because she was killed. Well, who was killed? I can't hear you.
What is it about, Archie?
He says he was due here an hour ago, but she was killed.
Who was killed? What does he want?
Do you want us to solve the crime? I say, do you want us to find out who killed her? Oh. He says he knows who did it, but he has an important message for you. Well, then come right over. We'll be waiting, Mr. Jenkins.
Archie, why do you insist on taking every silly little case?
Because, boss, we need to recover for March 15th.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that renowned genius who is the bulkiest, balkiest, most ponderous, and most brilliant detective in the world. Yes, none other than that chairborne mass of unpredictable intellect, Nero Wolfe, created by Rex Stout and brought to you in a new series of adventures of this NBC network in the person of Mr. Sydney Greenstreet.
This case I like to refer to as the case of the Telltale Ribbon. Perhaps a better title would be Wolf Goes A-Hunting. For in a way, this was one of those unusual instances in which my boss, of his own free will and without any coercion, actually decided to leave the house and go to the scene of the crime. It started when the strange old gentleman who phoned us finally arrived. Well, there's our client, Mr. Wolfe.
Evening. It's me.
Who's me?
Oh, I just phoned you. I'm Jenkins. I got a dispatch for Nero Wolfe.
Oh, you're Jenkins. Well, come in. Mr. Wolfe, this is Mr. Jenkins. Says he has a dispatch for you.
Yep. Yeah. Are you Wolfe?
I am. Where is the dispatch from?
Don't know.
You don't know? How come?
Oh, I know, but I'm supposed to say I don't. See? That's my job.
What is?
Just to say I don't know.
What about the murder?
Yeah, who was killed?
Oh, my goodness. It was a terrible thing. We were just crossing the turnpike, and this fella come at us out of nowhere.
The killer?
Yeah. Must have been drunk, I guess.
Well, how did it happen? Did he shoot her, stab her?
Oh, no. He ran into her with his car. And she was only 9 years old.
Your granddaughter?
No, it was Bessie. But the police got him. I have to appear, I guess. Probably get 90 days, he will.
For murder?
Murder? Was somebody murdered? I must have missed something.
Look, we're talking about Bessie, and what do you want us to do about it?
Nothing. Bessie's my old horse.
Oh, no.
But say, who was it that was murdered?
Nobody yet. Good night, Mr. Jenkins. I thought you said it was important.
It might be. At least that's the way I was told.
What might be?
This here letter I was bringing to you. This dispatch. Well, gotta get along now. Goodbye.
Well, get him. What a pixie.
What is in the envelope?
Mr. Wolfe, look. 5 $100 bills. And the note says, Mr. Wolfe, your services are desperately needed. Come up this weekend as my guest. Signed E. Malott.
Edward Malott, the wealthy manufacturer.
Well, looks as though you're going out this weekend.
Well, our GP, my respects to Mr. Malott, and I hope you enjoy the weekend. Good night.
Something's certainly phony about this. There's no party going on here tonight.
Yes? What is it?
Is this the Malott place?
It is. What do you want?
My name's Goodwin. I'm a guest of Mr. Malott's.
A guest?
Yes, he invited me down for the weekend.
Weekend? Oh. Well, you better step in, please, Mr. Goodwin.
Quite a bolt you've got on that door.
Yes, isn't it? Just sit down there, please. I'll get Mr. Malott. He's in the library. Oh, here he is. This is Mr. Goodwin, sir. Says he's come down for the weekend.
Mr. Goodwin, good evening. You'd come for the weekend, you say?
Well, yes, wasn't that the idea, Mr. Malott?
Well, I don't understand, Mr. Goodwin.
Didn't you send me this note asking me to come here?
Note? I did not. Oh, well, this is my personal note stationery, but I don't recall sending this. I didn't even type it. And I'm in the habit of signing my name with a pen, not with a typewriter. E. Malott.
You're certainly Edward Malott.
Yes. Services are desperately needed. What does this mean? What services? Who are you, Mr. Goodwin?
Are you serious? I'm a private investigator. I'm Nero Wolfe's assistant.
Oh, indeed. Nero Wolfe, eh? I know of him, yes, indeed.
And you really don't know anything about this note?
I do not.
Are you having a weekend party here?
I most certainly am not.
Then who sent this? And there were 5 $100 bills as a retainer.
I haven't the slightest idea. Oh, Dorothy.
Yes?
Will you step in here, please? Miss Davis is my private secretary. She may know something about this.
Yes, Mr. Malott. What is this?
Dorothy.
Oh.
Dorothy, this is Mr. Goodwin.
How do you do, Mr. Goodwin?
Well, how do you do, Miss Davis?
Yes. Well, Mr. Goodwin is assistant to Nero Wolfe.
You don't say. Nero Wolfe, the detective? Well, I've heard a great deal about him. And about you, too, Mr. Goodwin.
Well, now I'm mighty glad to hear you say that, Miss Davis.
Mr. Goodwin has a note here.
Is anything wrong, Edward? I heard voices. Oh, do we have company?
Nothing is wrong, Eva. I was calling Dorothy, that's all. Oh, this is Mr. Goodwin, Eva. My wife, Mr. Goodwin.
How do you do, Mrs. Malott?
Mr. Goodwin, yes. How do you do?
Now, as I was about to say, Dorothy, Mr. Goodwin...
What's going on?
Mr. Goodwin, this is my son, Larry.
Good evening. What's wrong?
Mr. Goodwin has been invited here for the weekend. He has an invitation supposedly written by me. At least it's on my stationery. Look at this, Dorothy. Know anything about this note?
No. I certainly didn't write it.
But it's my personal notepaper, and my signature is typewritten. I'd never do that.
Well, somebody sent it. Who's Jenkins?
Jenkins? Never heard of him.
A little dried-up old man. He delivered it to us. Yeah, maybe it didn't even come from this house.
I'm positive that it didn't. Never heard of Jenkins.
You have a typewriter here, of course.
Yes?
I'd like to see it.
Certainly, Mr. Goodwin, in the library.
How far have you come, Mr. Goodwin?
From New York, Manhattan.
Oh, and it's such a dreadful night, too.
Yes, and it is rather late.
Late? It's only 7:30.
Why not stay here for the night? Plenty of room?
Yes, Mr. Goodwin, plenty of room.
Well, I don't really think that's necessary. On the other hand, it would be a tough drive back to the city in this storm. I'll accept your hospitality, Mr. Malott.
Very good. Oh, Jeffries, show Mr. Goodwin to the East Wing. And take care of his car.
Yes, sir.
Good night, Mr. Goodwin.
You mean you're all going to retire now? I haven't even had my dinner.
We retire very early here. But Jeffries will prepare anything you want. Good night.
Oh, dear, who moved that phone? Hello, Wolfe speaking.
Archie, boss. Well, I'm here at Malott's place, but there ain't no party.
What happened? Are you in the right house?
I'm afraid I am. They've all gone to bed. Weird bunch. His wife, who looks very sickly and I think wants to say something to me alone, and Larry the son, and Malott's secretary, Dorothy Davis. She has me bothered a bit.
How unusual, especially if she's pretty.
A beauty, but she seems to know all about me.
You'd better come home, Archie. I can see you're in no condition to handle this case properly. Give them the money back.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. They don't want me here. Malott didn't send the note. No one here knows anything about it, so we can keep the dough.
Interesting indeed. The circumstances would indicate that you should stay there and wait for it to happen.
For what to happen?
For whatever it is the fates have conspired to have happen there while your shining little ego is in the midst of it. Bye.
Who is it?
It's Archie Goodwin, Mrs. Malott.
Come in, please.
I saw you give me the eye when I was about to leave. I've been waiting till I felt sure they were all asleep. Now, what's up?
I wrote you that note. I sent for you.
How do I know that?
Old man Jenkins is a scissor and knife sharpener who happens along every month or so. They wouldn't know him. I put 5 $100 bills in the envelope.
Okay, why?
My life is in danger. I've been threatened. I received 3 notes through the mail. They were all postmarked in New York City.
Did I see them?
Here they are.
All typewritten.
The first one reads, "There is no love for you in Grey Gables." The second, "Why stay on in the face of death?"
And the third, "The time is shorter than you think." Do you think this is an inside job, Mrs. Malott?
Well, at first I didn't. But lately I've come to think it is.
What caused you to think that?
For some time I've been having severe spells. I thought it was indigestion. But then it occurred to me that I always broke out in cold perspiration. I was left horribly weak and terribly thirsty.
Thirsty? You fear you're being poisoned?
Yes. And since the thought came to me, I've been living in fear. Fear of every bite of food or drink. It's so shattered my nerves that I have to take these yellow sleeping capsules to even close my eyes.
Well, here's your husband and his secretary and your son, Larry.
Larry is my stepson.
Which one do you suspect?
The secretary, Dorothy, or my husband, or both.
What's the motive?
Oh, they're in love. She's been here over 2 years, and they've spent most of their time together. The idea never occurred to me till last week. And when I watched them, it was quite obvious.
Anybody else know about these 3 notes?
Oh, no.
Then I'll keep them for a while. Good night, Mrs. Malott. And don't worry.
What are you doing, Mr. Goodwin, snooping around in Father's library?
Well, Larry, I was just trying to find out if this Remington was the machine you used to type those notes.
What? What notes?
The notes you sent your stepmother.
Why, I don't know anything about any notes.
And why were you so startled?
I'm not startled. Why would I threaten her?
So you do know about them. I didn't mention the contents of the notes.
I just happened to see them on the table in her sitting room.
You don't care too much about your stepmother, do you?
Oh, she's all right.
You don't care too much about Dorothy either, do you?
I certainly don't.
Why not?
Well, I don't like her tactics, making a fool out of my father. If anybody here sent those notes, she did.
You think Dorothy would have a motive?
I certainly do.
Of course you wouldn't have a motive, would you?
No.
Well, I'm inclined to think you would.
Well, just what motive would I have?
You don't seem to like any woman who's too close to your father. Maybe because you'd resent anyone sharing in the estate if your father died.
If I were you, Mr. Goodwin, I'd leave. Tonight. And the sooner the better. Good night.
Oh, Archie. Archie. Oh, confounded boy. Yes, Archie?
You have the wrong number. This is Sherlock Holmes speaking.
Why don't you go to bed like the others? You don't have to push it. It'll happen.
Eva Malott thinks she's being slowly poisoned. Suspects her husband and his secretary.
She could be right. What are the symptoms she suffers?
Gastric disturbances, weakness, thirst.
Indeed. What about the son? Have any ideas?
He doesn't like his stepmother and is decidedly against his father's secretary, Dorothy. He knew all about the notes Mrs. Malott had received. Saw them on her dressing table. He believes Dorothy's the culprit.
Then I should say that Dorothy should be the next on your list.
You can say that again.
Be careful, Archie. Use your head this time.
March 30th, 1951, The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, starring Sydney Greenstreet, on this Thursday. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 72 years ago today follows these messages from your favorite radio station. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We're listening to an episode of The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, starring Sydney Greenstreet, from Friday, March 30th, 1951. In the newspapers of that Friday, 71 years ago, these were some of the headlines. The Senate Crime Committee won a 30-day lease on life yesterday as its year-long disclosures of lawlessness and corruption spurred an unprecedented nationwide drive against racketeers and corrupt public officials. At the same time, the committee voted to press new contempt charges against New York gambler Frank Costello for his failure to supply a statement of his net worth. It dropped previous contempt proceedings against the New Yorker after deciding that he had purged himself by appearing before the group in New York. The 8th Army Command believes the Chinese and Korean Reds right now are capable of launching an offensive in greater power than the Communists have yet tried. In factors of weather and timing, the Chinese command could choose no better period for a massive drive than the first 3 weeks of April. Any belief that the Korean War may end by political settlement because United Nations forces now have driven near the 38th parallel is strictly wishful thinking and based on false conclusions, in the opinion of officers on the spot. All evidence is to the contrary. Senator Holland, the Democrat of Florida, said yesterday he has been advised that a new shortage of refrigerated cars in Florida will be corrected by early next week. The shortage occurred as the sweet corn crop began to ripen in the Lake Okeechobee farming area, Holland said, and while other crops were being pushed to maturity by good weather. Holland told a reporter he got in touch with the Interstate Commerce Commission officials and Gordon Stedman, Executive Secretary of the Florida Shipping and Growers League, after getting a complaint. President Truman praised the work of Senate Crime Committee yesterday, but said he has no intention of removing former New York Mayor William O'Dwyer as U.S. Ambassador to Mexico. While he gave Senate investigators great credit for focusing public attention on organized crime, Truman asserted that his administration has been waging war on racketeers for years. He added the main responsibility for stamping out crime rests with state and local authorities and the public itself. The Army said yesterday that the Far East Command has been asked for a report concerning a Navy chaplain's charge that some Army troops displayed cowardice during the retreat from the Changjing Reservoir in Korea last year. Lieutenant Commander Otto E. Spohr, Roman Catholic chaplain, said in a television interview in San Diego Wednesday, 400 men at the 7th Division had pretended to be wounded so they could be evacuated to Japan. He also said that the division's 31st Regiment had fled an enemy attack, leaving its dead and wounded behind. The Russians last night rejected strong American-British protests against the shooting up of a bus convoy containing 73 Americans and blamed American military persons for the incident. Major General Emil Matthewson, American commandant, protested the Soviet Control Commission delegate that the shooting by East German Communist police at the 4-bus sightseeing convoy was a deliberate, unprovoked attack which no properly constituted government could condone. Major General Geoffrey K. Bourne, British Commandant, in a letter of a protest even stronger than the Matthewson verbal one, demanded that the Red Police responsible be punished and that clear orders be issued against a recurrence. Though some of the day's top news stories, as reported in the newspapers of Friday, March 30th, 1951, on your radio, The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, the conclusion next on this Thursday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We'll close out a week of Classic Radio Theater on Friday with an episode of Elliot Lewis's produced program Crime Classics from 69 years ago, March 31st, 1954, the story of Robbie Boy Balfour, how he wrecked the big prison's reputation. A tale of old Scotland and a true love gone wrong. That's on Friday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now the conclusion of The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe. Sydney Greenstreet stars 72 years ago today, March 30th, 1951.
Incidentally, Larry advised me to leave the place tonight. Bit of a threat it was, too. What shall I do, Mr. Anthony?
Do nothing. The trouble will come to you. Bye.
Oh, hello there, Mr. Millard. I thought you'd turned in for the night.
It's quite obvious you thought so, Mr. Goodwin. What are you doing in the library?
Why, just looking for something to read.
You'll find the books all around the walls, not on my desk.
Well, I was looking for a particular kind of book. I'm very much interested in poisons.
Poisons?
Yeah, a hobby of mine. You happen to have any books on toxicology?
I do not.
And what's that book on the fourth shelf right beside you?
Why, toxico... Where did that come from? Never saw it before. Perhaps it was in that assorted collection I bought a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't noticed it. Larry probably put them on the shelf.
Mr. Millard, how long have you known Dorothy, your secretary?
A little over 2 years.
Did it ever occur to you that she might be, well, infatuated, in love with you?
What? Well, of all the... Now, see here. I don't know what you're up to, and I don't know how you got hold of my stationery to write that fake note.
It isn't a fake note, Millard. I'm only trying to find out what's back of it.
Mr. Goodwin, there is nothing going on here that requires the services of a detective, and Dorothy is not in love with me.
I didn't say she was. I asked you if you thought she might be.
Well, since this conversation seems to concern me, I suppose I am at liberty to come in.
Oh, you're still up too, Miss Davis.
Did you hear what this man said, Dorothy?
Yes, I did, Mr. Millard. And I'd like to have a few words alone with Mr. Goodwin, if you don't mind. Mr. Goodwin, would you mind coming with me for a few minutes?
No, not at all.
And, well, it's rather late, Mr. Millard. Don't you think you should retire? It's a heavy day tomorrow.
Well, yes. Yes, I suppose I should.
And please, don't let this upset you. Mr. Goodwin has been misinformed. I'll straighten him out. Come on, Mr. Goodwin. The bar is right across the hall. I'll fix you a nice, soothing drink.
That'll be nice.
Well, now, what would you like, Mr. Goodwin?
In the way of drinks? Oh, well, some 7-Up.
Really? Well, just sit down over there.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Well, where did you get the idea that I was in love with Mr. Millard?
First, suppose you tell me if you are in love with him.
Yes, I am. But until a few minutes ago, he wasn't even aware of it. I worship him and his work. I never wanted him to know because he's married. It would have caused trouble, and I'd have had to leave here. But now he knows it's true.
Well, now that he knows, what will happen?
I'm going to leave tonight. Now.
I see.
And since I don't own a car, Mr. Goodwin, I'm going to ask you to do me a very great favor. Would you run me into New York? I want to leave without a word. If I wait till morning, I'll have to explain to Mr. Millard, and... well, that would be most embarrassing, Archie.
Oh, now it's Archie.
You don't really mind, do you?
No, I guess I don't. I should, maybe, but...
Don't you like your drink?
What'd you put in this drink?
What do you mean?
What'd you dope it with?
Archie, why would I do that?
Might be several reasons.
There's nothing in that drink.
No? Then suppose you drink it.
Why? Give it to me. I'll throw it out. If you want another drink, fix it yourself. I'll have my things ready in 5 minutes. Are you going to take me?
Sure. Certainly I'm going to take you. But are you sure you have to go tonight?
I must go tonight. Now.
Wish I knew why. Mr. Wolfe's always so right.
What?
Just talking to myself.
Dorothy, Larry, Jeffries, come upstairs.
What's happened?
Call Dr. Hauser. Something terrible has happened to Eva.
Well, Dr. Hauser?
Ah, poor Mrs. Malott. No, there's nothing to be done now. It's all over.
Eva.
You'd better lie down, Mr. Malott. I'll phone and take care of everything. I'll be here if you need me. I have to make out the certificate.
Yes, come along, Mr. Malott.
Just a minute. You too, Larry. I don't want to make this any more unpleasant for you, but, Doctor, just what are you going to put on the certificate as the cause of death?
Acute gastritis.
Is that what you've been treating her for?
Well, she's had several attacks lately. I'd warned her to be cautious of her diet.
And that was wise advice, too. Did you know about these attacks, Mr. Malott?
Yes, I did.
And you, Dorothy?
Yes, I knew.
And you knew also, Larry?
No, I knew she hadn't been feeling well.
How long had Mrs. Malott been suffering from insomnia?
Oh, a year at least. I prescribed Nemitol.
The yellow capsules?
Of course. I wrote a prescription every so often calling for 12 capsules.
You all knew about that, of course. I thought so. And would this be the prescription, this little box of capsules here on... Well...
What's the matter, Mr. Goodwin?
That box was open on this nightstand when we stepped into this room. All right, let's have the box, Mr. Malott. Thank you. Why'd you pick it up?
Because I didn't want the stigma of suicide on Eva's name, nor mine.
Suicide?
Yes. Eva had this prescription filled yesterday morning. The dose is 1 at bedtime, 12 capsules. She took 1 last night. I glanced at the open box when I came into the room, and there were only 8 capsules left. I knew instantly what had happened. She'd taken an overdose.
Doctor, do you think 3 capsules would be sufficient to cause her death?
I doubt it very much.
So do I. Mrs. Malott didn't die from an overdose of sleeping capsules. She was poisoned.
Poisoned? Are you crazy? By whom?
By you, or Dorothy, or Larry.
No, I didn't do it. I didn't write those notes.
What notes?
Mrs. Malott had received 3 notes threatening her life if she didn't leave this house. Each of you had a motive, so I'm sending this body to the coroner for an immediate autopsy.
I won't permit it.
The police will see to it. You have no choice.
Yes, Archie. What now? Do you know who did it?
How do you know anything's happened?
Let us call it extrasensory perception.
Well, Mrs. Malott was right. She's dead. Her doctor knew nothing about the spell she was having as being caused by anything but indigestion.
How about an autopsy?
It's all in the works. Looks like a metallic poison, all the symptoms.
Oh? Did you search the house carefully for such a poison?
I did. And I'll check the drugstores in the morning.
Somebody in that house will purchase some poison. Let me know when the autopsy report is in.
Right.
Let's see now. We have Mr. Malott, Dorothy Davis, and Larry the son.
He's Mr. Malott's son, but not the child of Eva Malott, remember?
Yes. Is it true that Dorothy is in love with Malott?
Yeah. Dorothy admitted it to me, but claimed Malott wasn't aware of it until tonight. And earlier this evening, Dorothy tried her best to get me out of the house, insisted that I drive her into town. She tried to give me a drink which I think might have contained knockout drops.
You don't say. Archie, I shall have Fritz drive me up to the Malott place at once. Archie, are you there?
No, boss. I just fainted. And that, Mr. Wolfe, is most of the story up to now.
Very interesting. Yes, indeed.
But it isn't true. I did not put anything in Mr. Goodwin's drink.
Then did you ask him to take you into town?
Yes.
And I might have been found in a ditch.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Why did you try to get Mr. Goodwin to take you to town?
Because I felt it would be too embarrassing to remain until morning.
Maybe you'd already given Mother the big dose of poison and wanted Goodwin out before it was discovered.
Wait a minute.
Now, Mr. Malott, you claim that you knew nothing about Dorothy being in love with you. Should we believe that?
You can believe it or not.
Dorothy had a motive to get rid of Mrs. Malott. It seems that Mr. Malott had one, too.
And so did Larry.
What?
You admitted to me that you didn't like your stepmother.
And that you disliked Dorothy even more.
I didn't say that.
You said Dorothy was making a fool of your father. You resented the possibility of any woman sharing in the estate.
You knew about the sleeping capsules, and you could have put poison in some of them. You could have written those threat notes. And by getting rid of your stepmother and placing the blame on Dorothy, you'd be getting rid of them both.
But I didn't. I did not write those notes.
You were the only one who knew about them.
I was not the only one. I saw Dorothy coming out of Mother's room. It was this afternoon. Mother was out taking a sunbath. Dorothy did it. She's the one.
I think you're the one.
No, Dorothy wrote those notes.
That's a lie.
No, she probably slipped into Mother's room and wrote those notes on Mother's portable.
What? Hey, just a minute. Archie, come here.
I never heard of such
So
lies.
I didn't do it. You can't send me to jail. I'll kill you first.
Larry, drop that gun.
Don't come near me, any of you.
You're such a fool, Larry.
Give me that gun.
I'll shoot.
Come on. There. Now, you better quiet down, kid. Or Inspector Kramer will take care of you when he arrives.
Well, Mr. Wolfe, what goes on here? Where's Goodwin?
I sent him upstairs, Inspector Kramer, upstairs to Mrs. Malotte's room to check on something. Here he is.
Yeah? What have you been doing, Goodwin?
This, Inspector, is the pièce de résistance. This is what Mr. Wolfe has been waiting for. This little black box contains a typewriter, a portable noiseless Remington.
Mrs. Malotte's typewriter.
What? I didn't even know she had a typewriter.
Larry knew she had one. And this is undoubtedly the very typewriter the threat notes were written on. All three of them.
You were right, boss.
Oh, I knew she had a typewriter, but I didn't write those notes.
Oh, shut up. Archie, how do you know the notes were written on this typewriter?
I've compared the type and the ribbon. They're both the same. These notes were written on this Remington.
It was Dorothy.
Larry, I don't believe a word you've been saying. Dorothy couldn't possibly be guilty of such a thing. If anyone is guilty, you yourself certainly have all the earmarks.
Everybody's against me, even my own father. But I'm innocent, I tell you.
Let me get it. I think I know who it is. Hello? Yeah, just a second. You better take it, boss.
Wolf. Oh, yes, go ahead. Let's have it. Yes? He's here, but he won't mind. Yes? I see. Uh-huh. You just finished? Oh. Good. Right. Bye.
Was it the coroner?
The coroner, reporting that poison was found in the sleeping capsules.
And the body. Did they find poison?
They did.
You're right again, boss.
I'm going up to Mrs. Malotte's room for a while. I want you to come along with me. Find anything yet, Archie?
No, mostly bills and invitations to bridge parties and so on.
Ah.
You find something, boss?
Yes and no. This pocketbook detective story.
What about it?
I was just flipping through the pages, and I find this corner turned down. Well.
What is it?
Look and read.
Why stay on in the face of death?
Interesting.
The very words used in one of the notes.
Give me the book. Of course, this doesn't prove a thing either, but it does confirm what I was... Oh.
What now?
This cinches it. Get them all up here, Archie. Tell Kramer to bring them all to the bedroom.
Well, Mr. Wolfe, what now?
As you all know, Mrs. Malotte was poisoned by someone who had an opportunity to put it in the sleeping capsules. Someone in this household.
Yeah, but which one? The kid?
I never bought any poison in my life.
Be quiet, will you?
No, Inspector, it wasn't Larry.
And I suppose you think I put the rest of that rat poison in your drink, Mr. Goodwin.
No, Dorothy, it wasn't you. But how did you know it was rat poison?
I didn't. I just guessed. I can think, too.
Well, then if it wasn't Dorothy or Larry, you must mean me.
No, Mr. Lott?
Now, wait a minute. It had to be somebody.
Yes. This is going to be painful for you, Mr. Malotte.
Well, you mean that Mrs. Malotte did commit suicide?
It was more than suicide. It was suicide with an attempt to have both you and Dorothy convicted of murder.
She planted things?
She did?
I can't believe it.
Show him the pocketbook, mystery.
Here's the proof.
Some of the threat notes were lifted bodily from this novel. Look on the back cover. Isn't that Mrs. Malotte's handwriting?
Yes, and this is the other note, the one to you, Mr. Wolfe, composed in pencil before she typed it out on her machine.
Then, Wolfe, the note you received was the same typing as the threat notes.
See for yourself, Inspector.
Then why the dickens didn't Archie compare them right away?
Just one of those things, Inspector. There are times when even a good detective is a bit on the, shall we say, dull side. Don't you find that often true, Inspector?
Nice of you to go all the way out there, boss. I was a bit stuck.
Quite all right, Archie.
Yeah, there's something that still bothers me.
So?
How can such a sweet, motherly type as Mrs. Malotte cook up such gruesome ideas?
She was a very sick woman, mentally as well as physically. She probably felt she was going to die. And her warped mind seized on the opportunity to make sure that this Dorothy didn't get her man after she was dead.
And speaking of Dorothy, she's a mighty pretty...
Yeah, Some beer, please, Archie. If you were so certain that Dorothy wasn't guilty, what was the idea of spending so much time questioning her?
Huh? Why, I...
Never mind. The raised eyebrow department. Answer the question.
Well, there are certain rules a good detective always follows. Some are in the book, others aren't.
You mean there's nothing in the book which says a good detective shouldn't spend a few minutes with an attractive brunette, even though she is a murder suspect? The author of that book can be none other than the incomparable Archie Goodwin. Good night, Archie.
You have been listening to The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, starring Sydney Greenstreet. Tonight's transcribed story by John Edison was based on the characters created by Rex Stout. This is an Edwin Fadiman production, produced and directed by J. Donald Wilson. In the cast were Harry Bartell as Archie Goodwin, and Gene Bates, Irene Winston, Ted Von Eltz, Jerry Hausner, Vic Rodman, and Bill Johnstone. Don Stanley speaking.
March 30th, 1951, The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. This would be Greenstreet's final big splash in the media as he would pass away in 1954. Complications from diabetes and a kidney disorder, Bright's disease. And it was a sad end to a fairly solid career. He didn't even really get started until he was 61 years old in movies. So there you go. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Visit my webpage, classicradio.stream, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows on demand. Learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. Contact me, find our social media links, and you can buy me a coffee there to help us acquire additional classic radio collections and also build our social media links. That's at classicradio.stream. Build our distribution channels. Keep those up and running. classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.